Hi, I'm Stal. I stream Final Fantasy XIV on Twitch, from chill content to endgame rating. I tend to get many questions from new players who have been curious about 14 for the longest time, so I decided to make this guide. Sometimes the game gets really overwhelming for a new player, so hopefully this helps. This guide is mainly for new players who want to know more about the basics of the game. I can't go through every single detail, but it does cover questions that have been asked all the time and basic tips that I personally feel would be very helpful for a newcomer. But before we begin, you might be wondering, what is a sprout? So, a sprout is a nickname given to newcomers in 14 because you have a sprout icon next to your name. Whether you have played an MMORPG in the past or not, this guide will definitely save you some time in figuring out many aspects that a game will subtly hint or never tell you, especially if you tend to skip tutorials and dialogues, like myself. Before I begin, 14 has a trial version that is completely free to play until level 60, patch 3.56, which includes everything in the base game, A Realm Reborn, and the expansion Heavensward. So, what class or job should I play? Many players tend to get worried about what job they should start out with, since in some MMORPGs, certain jobs are deemed unviable in the game. My answer to that will be, play whatever that interests you. Fortunately for us, you can change jobs at any time after completing a certain amount of class quests. If you're worried about completing quests solo or raiding at endgame, you'll be happy to know that every job is viable. There's a meta, like in every game, but generally it is only important in high-level gameplay where you want to maximize your damage. When it comes to simply clearing content and playing the game, it really doesn't matter. Final Fantasy XIV is built on the Holy Trinity, which means that there are three main roles: tank, healer, and DPS. After choosing a class and going through the game, you'll be able to obtain a soul crystal, which unlocks an upgraded version of your class, also known as Jobs. This requires the completion of your level 30 class quest and the main scenario quest, Self-Management. If you're unsure of what to play, decide which role you're interested in and branch out from there. Note that certain classes will be unavailable unless you have access to the expansions Stormblood or Shadowbringers. Purchasing the Starter Edition will include both the base game and Heavensward. Purchasing Shadowbringers will grant you access to Stormblood, and finally, purchasing Endwalker will grant you access to Stormblood and Shadowbringers, but only on the 23rd of November. Here's an introduction of the roles, jobs, and their individual playstyle. The role of a tank is to lead the party and make sure the boss is always on you, while mitigating damage and supporting your party with certain abilities and cooldowns to ensure survival. Tanks are able to dish out decent damage as well. In a dungeon setting, tanks are expected to lead the group and set the pace at which a dungeon is done. In a raid setting, tanks play one of the two roles in the party, the main tank and the off tank. Main tanks pull the boss and hold it until a tank swap. Off tanks support the main tank and the party using their abilities. There are 4 tanks available in Final Fantasy XIV: Paladin, Warrior, Dark Knight, and Gunbreaker. Paladins start off as gladiators in Ul'dah and wield a sword and shield. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Paladin will be unlocked. Paladins have excellent offensive capabilities combined with strong defensive and support tools. They are capable of healing in emergencies, shielding, buffing the defenses of the entire team, and even taking attacks for an ally. They have the unique ability to block with their shields. Their ultimate defensive skill is Hallowed Ground, which nullifies all damage taken for 10 seconds. Offensively, Paladins cycle between physical attacks and holy magic. The physical attacks from Paladins recover MP, which can be spent to use powerful magic attacks. Warriors start off as Marauders in Limsa Lominsa and wield an axe. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Warrior will be unlocked. Warriors are simple but powerful tanks with high burst potential and strong sustaining capabilities through self-healing. They have a buff which turns damage they deal into a heal for themselves and also a targeted ally. Warriors also have the unique ability among tanks to increase the strength of incoming heals. Their ultimate defensive skill is Home Gang, which prevents them from dropping below 1 HP for 8 seconds. Offensively, warriors focus on building resources for huge burst phases and powerful attacks. To unlock Dark Knight, players must have completed all quests up to Before the Dawn. Dark Knights start at level 30 in Ishgard and wield a great sword. Dark Knights are tanks with both strong personal defensive tools and good offensive capabilities. They have a powerful self-shield and a magic mitigation ability, both of which have low cooldowns. If you're looking for a tank that can take huge hits, especially magical ones, and shrug them off, look no further. Their ultimate defensive ability is Living Dead, which makes them unkillable for 10 seconds, but requires them to be healed to full in that time. Offensively, Dark Knights are based around managing both their MP and gauge, both of which can be used for strong bursts of damage. Dark Knights have more flexibility in their rotations and can take advantage of buffs granted by their allies well. To unlock Gunbreaker, players must have access to the Shadowbringers expansion and have a combat class at level 60. Gunbreakers start at level 60 in Gridania and wield a Gunblade. Gunbreakers are fast-paced tanks with strong offensive capabilities while also having good defensive options. They build cartridges through attacking, which can be spent on powerful combos and skills. They have lots of abilities to be used in between skills, so if you're looking for a tank with an active playstyle, Gunbreaker should suit you well. Their ultimate defensive ability is Super Bolite, which reduces their HP to 1, but makes them invulnerable for 8 seconds. Gunbreakers are fun, fast-paced tanks that put out high damage and flow nicely. The role of healers is to keep everyone alive by healing and mitigating damage with shields. Unlike certain MMOs, healers can dish out decent damage and have no issues playing solo. There are two types of healers, Regen and Shield. Regen healers are able to use multiple skills that have healing over time effects, also known as HOT. These skills heal for more HP and are more MP efficient overall compared to regular healing skills, but require time for the heals to work. Shield healers, on the other hand, are preventative healers that shield and protect the party from incoming damage. These shields are not related to the HP pool, meaning with shields, the player's maximum HP is temporarily increased. Shields generally heal for lesser and cost more MP as compared to their HOT counterpart. However, they are very useful in situations where only by having a shield would a player survive a high damaging hit. Currently, these divisions are player-defined based on the kit of the healers, but when Endwalker releases, healers will be officially divided into pure and barrier healers. Currently, there are 3 healers in the game: White Mage, Scholar, and Astrologian. White mages start off as conjurers in Gridania and wield a Warren or Cane with no stat differences. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, White Mage will be unlocked. White mages are considered as regen healers and have the highest raw healing output of all 3 healers. Overall, they are good at reactive healing and recovering from blunders. They are the easiest healer to pick up with their straightforward offensive and healing skills, which can be supported even further by consuming lilies from the healing cage. However, they do not provide as much party utility as compared to the other 2 healers. In Endwalker, White Mage will be classified as a pure healer. Scholars start off as Arcanists in Limsa, Lominsa, and wield a book and are able to summon pets. Upon completing the class quest Forgotten But Not Gone at level 30, Scholar will be unlocked. Additionally, Arcanists can unlock the Summoner job after completing the class quest Austerities of Flame. Scholars, though mainly known as shield healers, can also summon pets to aid them. These pets have access to skills that provide their scholars with additional healing and buffing options. Scholars work well together with regen healers, as scholars provide damage boosting buffs and strong instant heals while supporting regen healers with pet healing and shields. In Endwalker, scholars will be classified as barrier healers. To unlock Astrologian, players must have completed all quests up to Before the Dawn. Astrologians start at level 30 in Ishgard and wield a Star Globe. Astrologians have the choice of playing as the regen or shield healer, as they have different stances that allow them to switch between the roles. These can only be changed when the player is not in combat. Thus, it is important to pick a stance that will synergize well with the co-healer. The gameplay of Astrologers revolves a lot around using cards to buff the party. These cards can be used to buff the damage of your party members as well as unlock a party-wide damage buff. Astrologer rewards the player immensely when played efficiently. In Endwalker, Astrologers will be classified as pure healers, which means there will likely be a change to the stances. Melee DPS need to get up close and personal with the boss to do damage. All melees will have to deal with positionals, which rely heavily on where and how the boss is being tanked. If you want to know more about positionals, they will be covered in the combat tips section later in the video. At the moment, there are 4 melee DPS: Monk, Dragoon, Ninja, and Samurai. Monks start off as pugilists in Ul'dah and wield fist-assisting weapons such as claws, knuckles, etc. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Monk will be unlocked. Monk is a high personal damage output job at the price of its strict placements and positionals. At max level, the playstyle is focused on various stances and forms. Monks have a passive that increases their attack speed and damage. This speed increase makes Monk one of the fastest paced jobs in the game. Monk is due for a major rework in Endwalker, so the playstyle of the job may change in the near future. Dragoons start off as Lancers in Gridania and wield a spear. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Dragoon will be unlocked. Dragoons have a very strict rotation to follow while focusing on their main skill, jumps. They pull good personal damage and utility for the party. There are not too many positionals for Dragoons as well. It is generally easy to pick up and considered as a pretty straightforward job. Ninjas start off as rogues in Limsa Lominsa and wield daggers. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Ninja will be unlocked. Note that Rogue is not available through the initial character creation and is only unlocked after completing a level 10 class quest. If the class you have initially picked is not in Limsa Lominsa, you will have to complete the level 15 main scenario quest that will bring you around Eorzea. After doing so, there will be a feature quest in Limsa Lominsa opposite the Fishing Guild. Ninjas bring the highest utility to the party as they are able to boost rate damage significantly. Similar to Dragoons, they do not have many positionals, but they deal damage in short bursts. At max level, their playstyle is focused on Mudras, which is similar to seals that cast different skills depending on the combination and managing various timers. You can summon a frog at higher levels, so it's basically Naruto. To unlock Samurai, players must have access to the Stormblood expansion and have a combat class at level 50. Samurai start at level 50 in Ul'dah and wield a katana. Samurais excel at personal damage output but lack utility. They have a strict rotation and few positionals to deal with. At max level, their focus is to build Kenki to perform certain skills and accumulate Sen to cast abilities. It is important to note that those abilities have a short cast bar, although there are only 3 such abilities. Ranged DPS attack from a distance and provide buffs and mitigations for the party. Currently, there are 3 physical ranged DPS: Bard, Machinist, and Dancer. Bards start off as archers in Gridania and wield a bow. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Bard will be unlocked. Additionally, the Perform feature will also be available. This can be unlocked by talking to Simkin in Old Gridania. Bards are a damage over time, also known as Dot, job that requires the player to keep up certain songs, buffs, and dots that provide sustainable damage while being aware of other buffs that are used across the rate. Using various songs and skills, Bards are able to increase the party's damage and provide mitigation. To unlock Machinists, players must have completed all quests up to Before the Dawn. Machinists start at level 30 in Ishgard and wield a gun. Machinists deal high damage in short bursts, and the player has to manage a heat gauge while being able to manipulate it according to the fight and its damage output. Similar to Bards, they are able to provide mitigation. However, they lack the ability to increase the party's damage. To unlock Dancer, players must have access to the Shadowbringers expansion and have a combat class at level 60. Dancers start at level 60 in Limsa Lominsa and wield chakrams. Dancers provide high damage utility for the party but have a low personal damage output. They focus primarily on their dances, managing an esprit gauge and obtaining procs known as fourfold feathers. Through their dances, which plays like mini DDR, they are able to provide buffs for the party and an individual which will be chosen as the dance partner. Although dancers are a ranged job, there are instances where they are required to be in melee range to inflict damage. As for casters, there are 3 jobs: Black Mage, Summoner, and Red Mage. Black Mages start off as Thaumaturge in Ul'dah and wield the staff. Upon completing the class quest at level 30, Black Mage will be unlocked. Similar to Samurais, Black Mages deal a significant amount of damage but lack utility. This comes with a huge restriction in movement due to its long cast bars, although it is made easier by certain skills and the long cast bars can be sped up by various buffs. Black Mages require optimization and knowledge of the fight to perform at their peak. Summoners start off as Arcanus and Limsa Lominsa, wield a book, and are able to summon pets. Upon completing the class quest Austerities of Flame at level 30, Summoner will be unlocked. Additionally, Arcanus can unlock the Scholar job after completing the class quest Forgotten but Not Gone. Summoners deal damage by casting dots and spells alongside their pets. Their playstyle mainly revolves around utilizing Aetherflow stacks by using skills, entering various trances, and managing pets. As such, they do damage in cycles. Summoners are also able to resurrect players in combat. To unlock Red Mage, players must have access to the Stormblood expansion and have a combat class at level 50. Red Mages start at level 50 in Ul'dah and wield a rapier. Red Mages are unique casters as their playstyle involves both casting and melee attacks. Most of the time, Red Mages cast spells to balance their black and white mana. After reaching a certain amount, they are able to deal melee combos before going back to the casting side of things. Their playstyle is heavily reliant on the concept of dual cast, which means upon casting any spell with a cast bar, the next spell is instant. Red Mages are able to heal and resurrect players in combat, although healing is only done in emergencies or during downtime in order to gain the dual cast buff. Frequently asked questions. Do race, deity, and Eorzean calendar matter? No, they do not. Although each race has different stats, you're better off picking whichever you want to play since the difference is so minimal. Deity has almost no impact on gameplay as well, so feel free to pick whichever looks good. The Eorzean calendar is similar to birthdays, so that doesn't mean anything either. Should I play it on Steam or PC? Honestly, it's totally up to you. However, if your trial account is on Steam, you can only register the full game via Steam. This is because your account is locked to Steam, and if you buy a PC key, you have to make an entirely new account. This also applies to current and future expansions. The good news about using Steam is you can use your Steam wallet to pay for Mockstation items and subscriptions. Many players, however, tend to advise against the Steam version due to discounts on the PC version and some minor account issues, but like I said, it's entirely up to you. If the game launches, then all is good. Which region, data center, or server should I join? So a quick crash course if you're confused about data centers and servers. Every region has a certain amount of data centers to choose from, and in each data center, there will be a good amount of servers. With the addition of World Visit, you can visit other players who are in the same data center as you, regardless of your server, but there are certain restrictions. However, you cannot visit other players from a different data center. There are plans for data center travel, but that will be added at a later date. So it depends on where you live. If you live in NA, EU, or JP region, then it's pretty straightforward. However, if you're living anywhere else like Southeast Asia or Australia, etc., then pick the one closest to you. Ping does matter in this game, especially if you plan to get into raiding. Usually, Australians will pick either NA or JP region, and Middle Easterners will pick EU, but that depends if you can fit into the time zones as well. An Oceanic data center is planned for sometime in early 2022. If you have any friends playing the game, I would say just pick the same data center and server so you can play together. If all of you are new or you're playing solo, it depends on what you're interested in. There are also recommended servers if you like to hang out with your fellow country friends, which I will start listing below. For any data centers, we have Aether, Primal, and Crystal. So, if you're into raiding, Aether and Primal might be what you're looking for. In Primal, Behemoth has many Australian and Brazilian players. Crystal Data Center is more on the role-playing side of things. With that being said, it doesn't mean that you can't raid if you're on Crystal. It's just that Aether and Primal are more raid-focused. Also, for Australians, do take note of the time zone difference before deciding between NA and JP data centers, especially for those planning to raid. On EU, there are two data centers, known as Chaos and Light. There's not much difference between the two data centers in terms of raiding. Instead, people usually pick servers based on their language. From what my EU friends have told me, German players tend to go to Shiva, which is in Light, French players to Mughal, and Russian players to Cerberus, both of which are located in Chaos. Lastly, in JP we have three data centers, Elemental, Gaia, and Mana. If you're reading this guide, or watching in this case, you're probably an English player, so always pick Elemental. The biggest English server on Elemental is Tonberry, followed by Kujata, and well, generally as long as you're on Elemental, there will be an English population somewhere. Language barriers do exist in JP servers, but eventually you'll be able to understand the basics. You'll be glad to know that JP players are mostly very patient and kind as long as you don't do stupid things to make them upset. So, the TLDR is: number 1, choose whichever region is closest to you. Number 2, pick the data center based on your priorities in this game. And lastly, for the server, well, if you're not looking for one that mostly speaks your first language, I guess you could just wing it. If you have friends, consider following them. Controller or keyboard mouse? Well, it's just a matter of preference. Controller users can be as good as keyboard users. A mouse makes it easier to navigate things, but that doesn't mean you will do worse on the controller. So just use whichever you're comfortable with. Can I just use a level boost or a jump pot or skip the story? Yes, you can. You need to purchase it from the MOG station and it is quite expensive. Generally, I do not recommend buying it if you're new, so you can familiarize yourself with the game. If you still wish to go ahead with it, it is highly recommended to use both level boost and story skip, although you have to do the latest expansion story yourself. The story skip includes unlocking necessary aetherites and such. However, anything not included in the story will not be unlocked, including dungeons, trials, and raids. Beginner tips. You must do all the main story quests, also known as MSQ. Newcomers tend to get sidetracked or lost, like myself. Just make sure you're completing every MSQ to progress through the story, as many things in this game are locked behind it. These icons indicate MSQ, so if you're not sure which quest to do to continue your MSQ, look for one of these icons. There's also a main story guide in your UI, so you won't get lost. Your first dungeon will be unlocked at a level 15 MSQ. There is a possibility that you might get locked out of MSQ if your level is too low, although this won't happen too often. But if it does, you can choose to do some side quests. These icons indicate side quests. These offer XP and help expand on the lore, but you don't need to do them. If you're sick of side quests, you can try doing fates. However, the best way to gain XP is to do dungeons. The downside is, if you are a DPS, your queues will be so long that you may opt for another option, which I will talk about later in the video. Consider completing feature quests. Feature quests tend to unlock other content ranging from dungeons, raids, new jobs, and skills. It is highly recommended to pick up these quests, maybe with the exception of new jobs until you're at a higher level, since it will take up too much space in your inventory. Trust me, I tried. These icons indicate feature quests. If you see one of these icons, know that doing this quest will unlock something upon completion of the quest chain. Complete your class quest every 5 levels and do your hunting log. Completing your class quest will give you gear and sometimes new skills. It also unlocks the hunting log, which gives you more experience if you kill whatever is stated in it. This is a good way to get experience in your early levels, so be sure not to miss out on it. However, jobs unlocked from expansions do not have hunting logs available. Do not attempt to grind mobs for XP. Nope, doesn't work that way, don't even try. Unlocking Guild Hast. Guild Hasts are small dungeons that give decent XP at low levels, especially during your first completion. Guild Leaves, on the other hand, are solo instance versions of that with more XP and potential bonus. However, you are limited by the amount of leaves you have on hand, which regenerates every 6 hours. These icons indicate guild leaves. To unlock this feature, talk to the leave quest provider in your town's adventurous guild to do one of the following side quests. Leaves of Bent Branch if you're in Gridania, Leaves of Swift Perch if you're in Limsa Luminsa, and Leaves of Horizon if you're in Ul'dah. After completing that, pick up and complete the quest Simply the Hast. New Guild Hast will be unlocked by completing a lower level Guild Hast. Hall of the Novice. When you reach level 15, you will gain access to the Hall of the Novice. The story will bring you there before unlocking the first dungeon. You can talk to the smith to start the training. There are several training exercises, so just complete all of them. These exercises will give you gear and a brand new ring that gives 30% XP gain while you're under level 30. This will be useful for leveling your current and future jobs. Eat food in dungeons, and maybe outside if you want. This is not really a huge thing, but eating food does net you an additional 3% XP. It doesn't matter what it is, and the NPCs along the way probably gave you a lot of food. Don't bother saving quest reward food for a later date, since it is generally not very useful except for the XP buff. Complete your daily duty roulette for XP. Duty roulettes, also known as DR, picks a random duty that you have unlocked and gives additional XP and rewards. It is split into multiple categories such as leveling, trials, guild hasts, etc. This is one of the fastest ways to gain XP, and it is highly encouraged to do it daily. However, you can only get the additional XP and rewards once a day. The daily reset is at 12 AM Japan time, or you can just note the reward already received at the bottom right. Only item level and XP bonus gear matters at lower levels. Many new players tend to get concerned over what gear they are wearing because of the substats. Fortunately, you do not need to care about all of that for now. Just pick whichever has the highest item level with the correct main stats, or the one that gives you an XP bonus. For example, the brand new ring is item level 30 and gives 30% additional bonus while level 30 or under, so keep using it until the XP bonus doesn't apply to you. Low level equipment, especially accessories, can be shared around, thus it is important to pick the correct main stat. Equipment will always show if it's specifically for tanks, Disciple of War, or magic. Naturally, tanks will pick the gear meant for them. For accessories, pick those with the highest value on vitality, if any, otherwise strength. As for Disciple of War or magic, just make sure the correct main stat is on the equipment. Don't bother hoarding miscellaneous items. They are generally useless until you start crafting, and you might not even use it, so just throw those items away or sell it to NPCs if you're really diligent. I hoarded a lot of things when I was a new player, and I can confirm that they were mostly useless. Set your languages in Duty Finder, especially if you play in JP servers. The game will check the language your client is using. This means that if you're using an English client, only the English option will be checked. If you intend to play in a JP server, there is no way you'll be getting any queues for a dungeon for at least a couple of hours if you do not check that JP language. But please do not be rude to the JP players. Unlocking Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High for future leveling. Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High are quick dungeons that give a decent amount of experience. This is extremely useful for DPS since dungeon queues are pretty long. Since leveling in there is separated from other content, it is also a good way to experience a job at a higher level so you can see if you like the playstyle of it. The downside of it is you are not able to fully learn how your class works because everything dies so quickly. Hire a retainer or two when you can. Unfortunately, not for the free trial. Retainers are similar to banks where you can keep your items and gil. In 14, we are able to hire 2 retainers for free. However, this feature is unavailable in the free trial. You can hire them in the main town's market area. Be prepared to spend some time because you can actually customize how your retainer looks and you have to think of a name for them. If you want more than 2, you have to get them through the mock station. Try not to get too tempted by crafting. I know it's very enticing to try new things. However, as a new player, crafting will most likely eat up all your gil before you know it. If you really do want to try something other than combat, consider picking up gathering first. It's useful since you can gather your own materials when you start crafting in the future, and you can sell it on the market board if you don't need it. Glamour is the true end game. Glamour allows the player to change the appearance of your gear. Basically, you don't need to look stupid while doing fetch quests and fighting trees or something. You can unlock Glamour by being level 15 and going to Vesper Bay in Western Thanalan. There will be 2 feature quests. If I had a Glamour, followed by Absolutely Glamorous. The story will bring you there a lot, so no need to worry about getting there on your own. Manage your settings, movement, HUD layout, and keybinds. This is really up to preference and there is no right or wrong in whatever you want to do. It is also highly recommended that you get this over and done with so you can enjoy playing the game without feeling frustrated. For movement settings, this game has standard and legacy type. It's kind of weird to explain it in words, so it's best for you just to try it out yourself. You can adjust it by clicking Escape, Character Configuration. Click the first red button on the left, which is Control Settings, and you should see Movement Settings. You can also make a bunch of changes to fit your playstyle. Next, we're going to talk about HUD layout. You can customize everything in your layout from the position of your hotbar to the opacity of your minimap. Each element you choose can be individually customized to your preference by clicking the cogwheel icon. For job gauges, you can choose to switch it to simple mode as well. Again, it is difficult to explain these things in words since we all like different things and it's best if you just play around with it for a while. Lastly, you can change your keybinds. As you progress through the game and level up, you will start getting more skills. This is when you will realize that some jobs actually require more keybinds and hotbars. By going to Escape, Keybinds, you will be able to change every keybind in the game. Now let's move on to combat. Tank tips. As tanks, it is your job to lead the party in content. This may cause new players to have something known as tank anxiety, as they are unsure of how to efficiently pull mobs and establish aggro over the party. There are several ways to pull mobs, but this is the one that I think is the best. Number 1, make sure your tank stance is activated. Depending on your job, you will be either using Iron Will, Defiance, Grit, or Royal Guard. Step 2, use your ranged attack on the nearest enemy. Again, depending on your job, your ranged attack will be either Shield Lob, Tomahawk, Unmanned, or Lightning Shot. Step 3. Position yourself in the middle of the group of enemies. Let them come to you, then use your AoE attack. Your AoE attack will either be Total Eclipse, Overpower, Unleash, or Demon Slice. Lastly, move through the group of enemies to face them away from your party, then continue using your AoE attacks. And that's it, easy. Provoke. How does it work? Provoke, which is obtained at level 15, is an important skill that will be extremely useful in any setting. When you use it, it sets the enmity of the target to the current highest. With the changes made in Shadowbringers, Provoke will now put you on top of the enemy's aggro list while generating extra enmity. More information regarding enmity can be found later in the video. Cycle through your cooldowns. Cooldowns are abilities that increase your survivability. All tanks have access to Rampart, Reprisal, and Arm's Length. Each tank also has a job-specific mitigation which we will show on the screen right now. As a fresh tank, you will not have many of these cooldowns to use, but as you level, there will be more options. Eventually, you'll be confident enough to mass pull mobs and cooldowns will be essential. Take some time to read through what each cooldown does and try out different things or ask around. Healer tips. Should healers DPS? As a healer, your first job is to keep the party alive. However, damage in this game tends to come in bursts, leaving many moments where you don't actually need to do much healing. There isn't a need to constantly keep every member of your party at full HP or keep shields up on all players. During healing downtime, it is advised that you use your damage dealing skills to help contribute to killing the enemies faster. After all, the best way to reduce damage is to kill the enemy. With that being said, don't feel pressured to immediately start DPSing. Although it is recommended to learn while you're still a fresh healer, go at your own pace and be comfortable with your toolkit first. Lucid Dreaming, is this important? Yes, the role action Lucid Dreaming, which is obtained at level 24, gradually restores your MP over time. MP is capped at 10,000 for healers, which makes it an extremely limited resource. Without Lucid Dreaming, you'll find yourself running low and soon dry. It is highly recommended to get into the habit of using Lucid Dreaming on cooldown. Asuna. What can it be used on? The role action Asuna that is obtained at level 20 removes a single detrimental effect from a target. It is important to note that not all debuffs can be removed. Back then, you had to play a guessing game to find out, but now things are much easier. To find out if a debuff can be removed, simply check if there is a line above the debuff. If there is, this debuff can be removed by Asuna. Otherwise, tough luck, you have to wait it out. DPS tips. Positionals for melee, mainly rear and flank. If you have been reading your tooltips, you would have noticed something called flank or rear. These are positional bonuses which deal more damage when used at a certain position. Flank is the sides of the target and rear is the back of the target. For example, Fang and Claw does 340 potency normally. If you execute it on the target's flank, it deals 380 potency instead. 40 potency doesn't sound like much, but when everything adds up, it costs you a lot. It is heavily encouraged that you learn how to handle positionals while you're still new. If you're still confused, this picture should make it easier. A quick note is if the circle is a full circle, it means there are no positionals and you do not need to perform them. Lucid Dreaming for casters. Is this important? It depends on the job and situation. Unlike healers who look to use it on cooldown, summoners and red mages will want to use it after casting raises, taking a raise, or when their MP starts to get lower from their rotation. Black mages on the other hand looks to never use Lucid Dreaming thanks to Umbral Ice MP recovery. General tips. Always be casting your skills. This is an extremely good habit to pick up and it will definitely show in high-end content. Make sure you are always pressing or clicking your skills instead of doing it once every 5 to 10 seconds. This is the most crucial element for improving your damage. Remember to read your tooltips. Tooltips are a description of your skills. Always read your tooltips. Yes, some of them are extremely long, but you should have a rough understanding of what it does. If you're still unsure, ask a friend or look it up in a guide. A few examples would be Swift Cast at level 18 and True North at level 50. Both skills are under their respective role actions, which will be extremely important in endgame content. I cannot emphasize this enough. Please read your tooltips. Use your area of effect, also known as AoE skills. At a certain level, all jobs will get skills that do AoE damage to multiple enemies. If you find yourself facing a large group of enemies, usually 3 or more, it is normally a damage increase to use these AoE skills instead of your single target attacks. Assign all role actions. Role actions have to be manually equipped. They are no different from the normal skills that you have, except they do not appear on your hotbar automatically after completing a class quest or leveling up. Instead, you have to go to the actions menu to select them. Just remember to put it on your hotbar. How to check your enmity or aggro. There are 2 ways you can check your enmity, also known as aggro. The first is on your enemy list, and the second is on your party list. For the enemy list, you can see indicators beside the enemies' names, which come in 4 colors. They represent the amount of enmity you have from the lowest to the highest in this order: green, yellow, orange, and red. The good part is you can see the enmity on every enemy, which is very useful in dungeons. However, this indicator is just a rough estimate which can be a little misleading. For example, it may seem like a tank has a solid aggro lead on all the mobs since the indicator is red, But there might be another player who is really close to overtaking that lead. The red square only indicates that you have an aggro lead, but not by how much. For the party list, you will see A or numbers beside your job icon, with the highest being A, followed by 2, 3, 4, etc. There is a bar beside it that shows how much enmity you have generated. This is extremely informative, as you can clearly tell how much you are ahead of in aggro. The downside is that this only shows for the targeted mob. When both of these tools are used side by side, it gives a clear picture of how much enmity has been generated. Do note that this is not a way to gauge exactly how much a DPS a player is doing. It is mainly for enmity and aggro purposes. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching my guide. You should probably try the expanded free trial of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV. You can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn, the award-winning Heavensward expansion, up to level 60 for free with no restrictions on playtime. I hope this guide has helped you in some way, especially for those who didn't know blue marker quests are called feature quests. You're welcome. If you're from Tonberry, or almost any server really, feel free to say hi in-game. And if you're interested in watching more Final Fantasy XIV content, I stream leveling, rate progression, fishing, and more, so follow me at twitch.tv/stal. Like, comment, and subscribe. I still don't really have an outro, so stay hydrated, drink water, water good, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.